Hello, Aquano here, back for another video on the Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake. Today, we're talking about the best personality for every class. So, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you guys the top 3 personalities for every class. Obviously, there's gonna be more choices, but these 3 personalities are the ones I consider the best for every class. Now, this is a mix of info I found on like Japanese forums and my personal opinion. So keep that in mind. If you have more choices of personalities, you can just let me know in the comments. Enjoy the video. Now, why Japanese forums? So this game just came out, at least at the time of recording, a couple days ago. And there's not much info on it, especially on like personalities and the learn set of every class, because the learn sets have been shuffled since previous versions, and a lot of personalities have been changed. The multipliers have been changed, and so I've just realized that Japanese people have that info, got that info a lot quicker. So I just used a bit of my Nihongo knowledge to try to get that info out of those forums. Now I'll leave all of my sources in the description, at least the most important ones, the ones for the personality multipliers and the one for the stats. So the stats, we're going to talk about them right now because we're going to talk about a lot of multipliers in this video, and we're going to talk about, oh, this stats, this stat, this stat. But what do stats do? Now, most of you guys probably know, but I'll go over them quickly. So we have strength, which influences your attack power physically, resilience, which influences the damage you take, how much damage you take, agility, which influences your turn order, and stamina, which influences your HP growth. Wisdom influences your magic power, influences how fast you learn your spells, and influences your heal strength. Now, luck is the one that changed a lot since previous versions. Now, it not only does it affect the rate at which you get affected by ailments, it also affects your damage rolls, so you get higher damage rolls when you attack physically, and it affects your critical hit rate. So, very good stat now. Now, onto the personalities. Now, before I go over every class, I'm going to talk about what personalities actually do. What's their multiplier? There's a lot of things that the game doesn't tell you. So, first of all, how to change personalities, because I'm going to give you guys the best personalities, but you might be wondering, okay, but how do I get them? Now, if you haven't started the game yet, you can reroll personalities in character selection, character creation. When you create your party members, you can try to reroll for different personalities. To have higher odds of getting the personality you want, you need to select seeds yourself and put them in the stats that personality boosts. Now, what do the personalities actually do? They have a multiplier on every single stat. The multiplier, the stat that they don't change, will have a multiplier of 100%. Now, when it says slowly, it's usually a multiplier of 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%. So 60% of the normal rate, which is a bad thing. It's not 60% extra. Now, if it says balanced fashion, usually it's 100% or 105%. So kind of like normal rate or a small 5% boost. Now, when the description of the personality says slightly quicker than normal, it means that it has a 110% rate or a 115% rate. So this is, like it says, slightly better than normal. So a 10% boost or a 15% boost. Now, when it says quickly, it's usually a 20% boost. So 120% rate. And then the one we're looking for, the best one, is when it says extremely quickly. Now, extremely quickly can be either 130% or 140%. There's only one class, in which case it's 150%. And we're going to talk about it later. It's the Lucky Devil. Now, one thing, really important thing to keep in mind while browsing the personalities in game. So the game gives you a description of every personality when you go in the Traveler Tips. Now, those descriptions are very, very bad. They're a scam. You can't just trust them blindly because they give you almost no info. Well, they give you the main info, but there's a lot of info they just don't tell you. For example, a really good example I found is literally the first one, Acrobat. In the Acrobat description, it says, agility increases quickly. That's it. And yes, the Acrobat has a 120% growth rate for agility, but what the game doesn't tell you is that this class lowers the growth rate of 4 other stats. 4 other stats, which is not good at all. The only other stat that like grows at like a normal rate is wisdom. So Acrobat is not a really good personality, even if you want to grow your agility. There's way better options. Now, before we start, I want to mention a certain personality that everyone has heard of that is good for everyone. If you're not sure about what to choose, you cannot go wrong with VAMP. VAMP is the only personality in the game that gives you a boost in more than 2 stats while not lowering a single stat. Like, it doesn't lower a single stat while giving you insane boosts for so many stats. Now, VAMP is a crazy personality. If you want to get it on every party member, go ahead. But since it's so good and it's good on every class, I won't repeat it for every class. So I'm going to exclude VAMP from the top 3. So this is going to be the top 3 for every class except VAMP. Or else this video will get really repetitive. Now, it's already repetitive because there's a couple personalities that are better than the rest, and so they're going to repeat themselves a lot while we're going through every class. But it is what it is. We'll just I'm here to give you guys the best. I had to repeat myself sometimes. Now, on to the first class, the hero. Now, for the hero, this is probably the easiest class to build because the hero is an all-round. He can do everything. So any personality that has good multipliers, high multipliers, and balanced multipliers will work. The hero is the complete all-rounder. So here are the top 3. Now, first of all, we have the lone wolf. Very good personality. We're gonna repeat it multiple times during this video. It has a really good multiplier for every stat except luck. Now, luck is useful, but if you can just grab a couple luck seeds, this personality is broken. Like you see here, it gives you a good boost to resilience, stamina, making you very tanky. If you want to use some magic, you have a 10% boost in wisdom, you have a 5% boost in strength, 10% boost in agility. It is a very good personality for all-rounders, or just if you want a balanced party member. Now we have Tough Cookie. Tough Cookie is the best defensive class, a defensive personality in the game. Now, the only drawback is that your wisdom is lowered. Well, and luck, but usually wisdom is more problematic because a lot of magic dealers want wisdom, don't really want luck. So if you want to use your hero as a magic dealer, if you didn't start with Mage, for example, I don't recommend Tough Cookie. But it is a very good choice. Look at this. 130% resilience, 140 stamina, 110 strength. Like, this makes your hero an absolute unit. Now, Lucky Devil, like we talked about earlier, it has the highest multiplier of every personality. The only personality with 150% growth rate, so a 50% boost to the luck, which influences crit, damage rolls, and the chance of getting a hit with an ailment. Very good. And like you see here, perfectly balanced personality. 100, 100, 110, 100, 100. So perfect for the all-rounder that is the hero. On to the next class. The class that most of us start with, the trustworthy healer, the priest. Now, the priest, even though he's a magic caster, you have a lot of choices for your personality because your main task is to support your party members. Now, not just for healing, ailment cleansing, buffing, debuffing the enemy. So even if you choose a class that doesn't have too much of a wisdom boost, it's fine. Now, the priest wants agility to be able to heal your allies quickly before the enemy finishes off your low HP party members. And wisdom is good because it makes you heal more, makes you learn spells earlier, and do more damage with for example, the wind spells that you learn. Now, we don't really need luck. You kind of do because this is the class you use to cleanse ailments. So if you're getting status, it's kind of bad because you're the one healing them. So you do want decent luck. Now, the first class, it's the Lone Wolf. We already talked about it. It's very good. Its multipliers are looking good. We talked about it earlier. it's a very good all-rounder personality. We're gonna see it a lot. Very good for Priest. Now, a second choice you have, one that I haven't talked about yet, is Bat Out of Hell. Very interesting name. It's the best agility-oriented personality. So if you want to make a fast party member, you're gonna look at this personality every time. So if you find a book that gives you this personality, hold on to it. It's a very precious book. Now, when you see here that the resilience is the only class that loses 10%, but this class gives you a 40% extra. So you sacrifice 10% defense, the resilience influences defense, but you get 40% agility. That is crazy. So if you want a fast healer, this is the personality for you. Now, if you want an offensive option on your Priest, we have Genius with a 140% growth rate in Wisdom. Also gives you a 20% boost in Agility, 120% growth rate. So Agility, Wisdom, 2 stats you want a lot. A fast healer who can also deal a lot of damage. It's a pretty good choice for the Priest. Now you get a book that gives you the ability to change to Wisdom pretty early on in the game. I don't remember the exact location. If you guys know, let me know in the comments. But having played the game, I do remember getting this book very early. So this is a viable option for the Priest. On to the next class. Now on to the Merchant class. This class is very interesting because it can kind of transition into anything, because it has very decent and balanced stat growth. It has very decent Wisdom growth, very decent Strength growth. So it can attack physically, magically. You can transform it into anything you want. So if you start with it, try to think, what do you want to make that merchant become? And if you're not sure yet, then here are 3 safe bets for the merchant. So first of all, you have the Lucky Devil. The Lucky Devil is the one that influences luck a lot, 50%, and a very, very balanced stat growth for all the other stats. So if you're not sure what you want your merchant to be, just give it Lucky Devil. It's gonna be very good for him no matter what. Now, Bat Out of Hell, back at it again. If you want a really fast merchant, really fast party member, you can never go wrong with Speed, especially since the stat has very decent growth rate for every other stat, except a slight nerf in Resilience, which is a lot worth the 40% agility. Like, that's what makes this personality really good. It's because of the trade-off, you know, losing 10% for gaining 40%. Now, Ironclad. This is the first time we talk about this personality. Ironclad is a really, really good defensive class that lets you preserve your Wisdom. So we talked about some other tanky personalities like the Tough Cookie. The Tough Cookie had really similar tankiness, a bit more strength, but it lost 20% growth rate in the Wisdom. Now the Ironclad is a very tank option for someone who you don't necessarily want to lose Wisdom, because the merchant can be transitioned into a Sage way later in the game if you want, like, because it has decent Wisdom growth. So Ironclad is a safe bet. Now on to the next class. A Wall, an absolute unit, a tanky DPS. It's time for the Warrior. Here are 3 perfect personalities for the Warrior. So, the Ironclad, the Lone Wolf, and the Tough Cookie. I'm telling all of them at the same time because you already saw all 3 of them, and these are very, very solid choices for the Warrior. The Warrior wants to be tanky and hit hard. The Warrior is already slow. Now, there's not much point to growing his agility when he is a Warrior. You can later transition him into a Thief. More about that on my class transitioning video. But the Ironclad is if you want to preserve his Wisdom, and if you want sacrifice more agility for more luck and more Wisdom. The Tough Cookie is kind of the same as Ironclad, but you get more strength, you get less luck, and less Wisdom. Now, you kind of trade the stamina and resilience, so you have more HP, less defense. The Ironclad has more defense, less HP, but it's a slight difference, like a 10% difference. So both are really good tank options. It depends if you want to lose on Wisdom or not. Ironclad also has better luck growth, which can be useful for critical hits if you plan to becoming a martial artist. Now, the third option is the Lone Wolf, which is the safe bet. It's probably one of the best personalities in the game. In my opinion, it's the second best personality in the game after Vamp. Very, very good choice. You sacrifice luck for insane growth, for very good growth in every other ability, every other stat, I mean. It boosts every single stat except luck. Very good personality. I feel like this far you already know that, so let's just go next. Now, the Thief. You usually see this class for utility, or if you want to build the agility of your character. So if you want to make a fast Sage in the future, you go Thief. You want to make a fast martial artist, Thief. Fast Monster Wrangler, you get the gist of it. So, you want agility, obviously. Now, the agility stat growth of the Thief is already very, very high. So, as long as you don't lower it with the personality, you're fine. You don't necessarily need more agility, unless you want to commit to being the fastest thing on Earth. If you want to do that, then, of course, Bat Out of Hell. I already talked about this one before. It is the best agility personality in the game. In my opinion, it's the only choice if you want like a fast character, very, very fast character. Now, we have the Lone Wolf. Again, this is, I know it's getting repetitive, but there's gonna be some outliers out there. Now, the Lone Wolf for the Thief is pretty good. Now, if he wants to throw some spells later, if he learns them, hey, he has some wisdom. He has a 5% growth in strength, so his strength is not diminished. This class is very good because it gives him 20% resilience and 20% stamina and a small agility boost, which he doesn't really need. So this can make him very tanky while preserving his speed, which is important. That's why we don't give him Tough Cookie or Ironclad, because he wants to preserve his speed. Now, if you want a more balanced option, we have Lucky Devil. Lucky Devil doesn't lower your luck, because that's the issue with Lone Wolf. If you want to be able to deal a lot of critical hits with those whips and boomerang that the Thief can equip, you have the Lucky Devil as an option. Where you talked about this one, a lot of luck, so a lot of crits, higher damage rolls. And for the other stats, pretty balanced, so this is a very safe bet. Now, on to the next class. Now, on to the Mage, the spellcaster by definition, one that you guys probably started with. Now, this is a spellcaster, so wisdom, good. Now, how do we get wisdom? You have two options, two really good options for a wisdom-based personality. We have Genius and Wit. Now, these two are very, very good classes for spellcasters, especially the Mage, since he wants basically just wisdom damage. Now, you don't want to be too squishy. So the Genius gives you, the Wit gives you 20% more stamina growth than Genius. So that's something to keep in mind. But the Genius personality gives you like a 40% wisdom growth rate extra. So you kind of have to choose. If you want to do a lot more damage than Genius, even though it's a slight change, if you want to have more luck and be a bit more tanky, having more HP, Wit. Now, one thing to mention is that the Genius has more speed. Now, hitting first is not as useful on the Mage than it is on the Priest, because the Priest wants to heal first before the party members dies, but speed is still useful on the Mage. A fast Mage is not to scoff at. So, you choose between having more speed and a bit more wisdom versus being tankier. So, make your choice for your Mage. Now, for the tanky Mage, which is our third personality option, this is, in my opinion, a very, very good choice. Like, a tanky Mage with this personality is very good. It's the Ironclad personality. Why? Because this personality doesn't affect your wisdom growth rate, which means you're naturally going to have a good wisdom growth rate because of your class as a Mage. So this one doesn't disturb it, it doesn't lower it, but it gives you an insanely good growth rate for resilience and stamina, which affects your defense and HP. So you're gonna end up with a wall, with a unit, with a magical unit, paladin. Especially if you're gonna transition your Mage into a warrior later in the game, or even just a Sage, this class is very good. If your Mage is dying often, consider switching to the Ironclad personality. Now, on to the next class. Now, let's talk about the newly added class in this HD-2D remake, the Monster Wrangler. So the Monster Wrangler is a very, very good DPS class. The more monsters you get, the more tools he can add to his arsenal that kind of do... He can do some healing, he can do some magic, he has the stats for it if he wants, but he is mainly a damage dealer. Now this class is either used as a DPS or like or a character to build a DPS. So you can keep a Monster Wrangler till the end game or build a DPS. So think about that when choosing a personality. First of all, the Lone Wolf. Now the Lone Wolf is probably the best offense-oriented class here. Why? Because you don't really need that much attack yet, because there's going to be many turns where you're going to heal your party or use skills that don't necessarily require strength. If you have a warrior or a martial artist in your party, they're the ones dealing the damage. So Lone Wolf doesn't have that big of a boost in strength, but it has a lot of stamina, agility, resilience, and a very balanced state. Like I said, in my opinion, this is one of the best personalities in the game, so very good choice for the Monster Wrangler. Now, if you want to make a very fast Monster Wrangler, you have the Bat Out of Hell option, which we already talked about many times. This one doesn't affect your other stats as much. You only use 10% in resilience for 40% extra agility. The Monster Wrangler hitting first can be very clutched because he's a very good DPS, so it's useful to be able to finish some low HP enemies before they get to attack. Speed is very useful. Agility is very useful on this class. Now, if you want a more tanky Monster Wrangler that still can dish a lot of damage, Tough Cookie is one of the best options. That's the one I'm going for with my Monster Wrangler because it gives a 20% growth rate in strength. So in my opinion, this is better than Lone Wolf for the Monster Wrangler. 20% strength while making him very tanky in resilience and stamina. Now the luck stat is pretty low, but with some seeds and transitioning him later into a martial artist, which needs luck but later doesn't need luck because he has guaranteed crits. So Tough Cookie is a very, very good class, and on the Monster Wrangler, it's a really good choice. On to the next class. One of the best DPS classes in the game, the Martial Artist. Now, this is a personal favorite of mine because it's a very simple class. You just punch shit. Your job is to do damage, so you want damage. So, this class wants its strength boosted and balanced stats, because it kind of needs everything except wisdom. You don't really need wisdom in this class, but anything else you want. So, if you don't want wisdom, also luck kind of loses value. Because, yes, you want luck, but like I said, it loses value later because you have guaranteed crits. So, Tough Cookie is a very, very good choice for the same reasons as the Monster Wrangler that I just talked about. So we can just go to the next one. Lone Wolf, same thing. Most of the time, we use Monster Wrangler and Martial Artist together for the guaranteed crit passive combined with the 2-act in 1 turn passive. You combine these together to make it the ultimate DPS. So naturally, these two classes kind of want the same personalities. So Tough Cookie, Lone Wolf. Now for the last option, since I already talked about a tanky option with the Monster Wrangler, let's talk about a more luck-oriented and balanced option, the Lucky Devil. Now the Lucky Devil is the tough choice. I wouldn't personally choose it, but I consider it one of the top 3 because for a huge portion of the game, it's probably the best class. Because the guaranteed crit passive that the Martial Artist learns is at level 47. So for the entire early game and most of the mid game, your Martial Artist is going to require a lot of luck. So Lucky Devil is going to be his best friend. Lucky Devil is going to give you a 50% chance, a 50% boost in luck, 150% growth rate, which is the highest rate of all personalities. So this is pretty good. And as you see, there's no stat that's getting lowered. So he has a 10% boost in agility, which he needs to hit quick. So this is the perfect personality if you want to hit quick and hit crits. So, but like I said, this personality does fall off in the late game. So if you're someone who's thinking on transitioning into Martial Artist later in the game, do not consider this personality. Keep that in mind. Now, on to the next and last pair of classes. So, I decided to put the Gadabout and Sage together for obvious reasons. the Gadabout will want to become a Sage every time. Pretty much every time. If you're playing the Gadabout for getting a Sage, because you want a Sage. So they kind of want the same personalities. Now there is one exception. If you're playing on a harder difficulty, or you're not like that familiar with the game, you can give your clown a tankier personality before he becomes Sage, just to make the game easier, to not so he doesn't die every time and be useless. So if you want to tank your clown, you can go with Ironclad. Why? Because this is the best tanky class that doesn't lower your wisdom. You don't want Tough Cookie on the clown, on the Gadabout, because he's gonna become a Sage, and the Sage requires a lot of wisdom, so you don't want him to kind of like lower his growth rate in terms of wisdom. Now, most of the wisdom growth was gonna be when he's gonna become Sage, so it's not that big of a deal. But Ironclad is a crazy choice with a 40% increase in resilience, 30% increase in stamina. Yes, you're a bit slower, but this class is very good if you want your clown to survive. And it's still very good if you want a tanky Sage later on down the line. Now, we talked about wisdom-oriented classes, Wit and Genius. For the Sage, I'm only going to recommend Genius in the top 3, because there's also Lone Wolf that I consider in the top 3. So you have Genius and Lone Wolf as other options. Genius is an option if you want to focus on damage while sacrificing a bit of HP and still staying fast. So the Genius gives you a crazy 40% boost to your wisdom. You're gonna hit very hard with those spells and still be very fast. Lone Wolf, I think you guys already know by this point. Lone Wolf is one of the best classes in the game. It works on pretty much everyone except an early game martial artist. It's some strength if you want to hit with your staff, 20% resilience while lowering no stat except luck, which you don't need as much because you don't crit and you don't want damage rolls on physical attacks. It gives you decent wisdom. Now the Sage, this is going to be better when you're going to be Sage, because Sage already has a high growth in wisdom, so 10% is already good. He doesn't need that much, if especially since you're training this extra wisdom that Genius gives you, with the 20% increase in both resilience and stamina. So the Lone Wolf here is kind of the middle ground between Genius and Ironclad. So make your choice. Your Sage is probably going to be broken either way. It's the best class in the game. So yeah, that's it for the last pair of classes. Well, this is it. These are the best personalities for every class. Now, there's a lot of repeats because, like, I think I only mentioned like 8 different personalities, because these are kind of like the best personalities in the game. So, well, at least according to me and a lot of people on the internet, you know, we're always here to learn. If you guys think there's a underrated personality that I haven't mentioned, you guys can let me know. But there's a reason why I didn't mention them. There are other good personalities, but I had to just leave it to the top 3, or else this video is going to be longer than it already is. So thank you guys for watching, and if you want to know more about class composition, I made a very good video about it. And if you want to just know more tips about the game, I made 2 other videos about it, so you guys check it out, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.